Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vassell and welcome to Week in Review. This is where we talk about all the videos we put out over the past week. We give you short summaries of each of them, and then if you would like to see the whole video, the whole review, whatever it might be, click on the links in the description below. Now, I do want to point out here that this coming week is the Dice Tower Retreat. So we're not going to be putting out a lot of new videos here on the Dice Tower, but we are going to be running Dice Tower TV. Dice Tower TV is going to be running live, and it's just be a bunch of our old videos that are live, but it lets you go in and chat with other people and talk to other folks as you watch some old videos that you might not have ever seen before. Some of them aren't that old, they're from this year, but some are from the 10 years or more older things to see. So hopefully you enjoy that, and then we'll be back in full force next week. But let's get started here with Week in Review.
Hey everybody, I'm Z Garcia. Here's what I did last week. So I reviewed Splito, which I gave a 6.5 out of 10 to. This is an interesting little card game in which you are sharing an area with the player to your right and to your left, playing cards into either one of those, or ideally both, and trying to get good scores in there by playing cards that are scoring opportunities and then other cards that fulfill them, and multiplying both sides to get your score. It's an interesting idea. I don't tend to like games in which you're sharing an area with the player to your right and to your left, but in this week I reviewed 2 of them, so there you go. But this one does a couple of clever things by adding a couple of these goals to the center of the table at the beginning of the game, and then they go to whichever one of these areas best fulfills it. I think that's a nice twist, and it's necessary in this game. It elevates it a little bit over other games of its ilk. But I found it just all right, ultimately. I reviewed The Legends of Andor Eternal Frost, which I gave a 7.5 to. It's a return to The Legends of Andor, which has had quite a few big boxes and small boxes by now. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a nice return. I think the icy setting and some of the things they do in it is wonderful. But I do wish by now, this being, the 4th big box, I think, they would have done a few more things to ease the simplicity of getting into this game, or just some of the usability issues, things like having player aids that are clearly labeled player aids, and you can put them out and they tell you everything you need to know quickly without having to go looking through a deck of cards to find out which ones are the player aids. Things like allowing you to tune difficulty in more different ways. Things like that. I think I would enjoy that a little bit more. But having said that, Legends of Andor is fun and really puzzly and interesting, and this continues that trend for me. I reviewed 7th Sea City of the 5 Sails, which I rated an 8 out of 10. This one is based on the old trading card game, 7th Sea. It's a new sort of expandable card game. It's incredibly complex. It has a lot going on in it. It is thinky. It is deep. It's a lifestyle game. It's one that you do not play casually. You need to get into this game. But it is also, for every one of those things that I would say, pushes people out, it's also a very interesting and in many ways a modern concept. It has area control in an interesting way. There's multiple ways to victory. It has a shared city deck that is the folks and the things and the events that are happening in this City of 5 Sails, and you'll be using that deck every time you play, so you keep seeing the same characters show up. You can go and hire them. You can buy items from the city. You can move your people out to the city and do various actions. It has a fantastic dueling system. One of the most interesting fighting systems I've seen in any of these kind of games. So the game is incredibly clever. It is just very, very hard to get into. It's thinky, it is deep. But if you cross that hurdle, if you get into the game, I think it's going to be one that is incredibly rewarding for you. And then lastly, I reviewed Take a Seat, which I gave an 8 out of 10 to as well. This one is the other game that you're sharing an area with the player to your right and to your left. This one's sort of a flip and right, in which you are seating people at a theater, and you are going to be doing so with polyominoes in a very clever way, where you are crossing off spaces on a polyomino, making that shape smaller, but claiming area control basically by doing so. So the shapes you were putting out in your theater change and mutate as you claim pieces that you take and your opponent take. It's a bizarre idea, but one that finally takes roll and write style games and does something different with them. This is one that is post that sort of everyone jumping on board with this genre because it's popular. Here's a game that comes along and says, okay, we can do this, and let's add a couple of twists. So it finally does that, and I appreciated that. So there you go. That's it for me, folks. I'm Z Garcia. I'll see you on the next one.
Hey, this week I took a look at 5 games, the first of which was Oranienburger Kanal, a 5.5. I can see that there's a lot of clever things going on. Here's a smart engine that you kind of build through, but it's just not fun. It's not enjoyable for me. This game starts off very random. You have a semblance, I have at least, a sense of direction in the middle, but it's only a slight one, and then by the end I don't have that direction anymore. Not an movie that speaks to me, so 5.5. Next up, Rauha. I'm not sure how to pronounce this one, a 7.5. This one is a neat little card drafting game. It does things differently, but it has some familiar elements of scoring, a little bit chasing majorities and stuff, and firing off rows and columns. It has a nice amount of time that the game lasts. It's not too long. I can see what's going on here. That's very fun, and I want to come back to it. So 7.5 for Rauha. Next up, Splito. This is a card drafting game that I give a 7.5. You play a card to your left or to your right, and you're working in between 2 players in those zones in between. And I like how this one works a lot. I think that it's such a simple and welcoming card game that I could see being in almost any home and people would have fun playing it. So that's why it's a 7.5 for me. Light, filler, it's a little bit popcorny kind of a game, but still good. Take a Seat, I gave an 8. This is a roll and write adjacent game. Choose, share and write, or however it's called. And I think that it does that really well, where you're kind of, once again, playing off the character on your, or the people on your left and your right in a very nice theater kind of a setting. It does some elements familiar and some elements very new, one that I can't summarize very quickly. I would recommend go watch that review if it sounds interesting to you. And lastly, Wandering Towers, also an 8. Kramer and Kiesling are still at it, making a fun game of covering up wizards with towers and trying to kind of remember under which tower your wizards are, moving them in a circle. As a game that sounds like it's for children, it's actually very engaging. And I've played this with other adults as well, and it's just a silly, fun time, but it's still a decently strategic, kind of tactical game. So fun enough to get an 8 from me, and that's been my week.
Hi, I'm Wendy Yee, and I have 3 games this week to review. The first one is Oranienburger Kanal. Now, this is a 2-player only worker placement game, but basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to sequence cards in front of you, and you're trying to make sure that you're playing them and surrounding them and activating them at the right moment so that you can score the most points while also setting up for the future. So it's a game that I quite enjoyed. I gave it a 7, and I liked it because of that sequencing effect. Now, I felt like it reminded me a little bit of Reef, but a much more in-depth, heavier game. And so I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. Good job, Uwe Rosenberg, for doing something a little bit different. Now, the next one for me is Wandering Tower. I gave that a 7.5. This one, you're trying to get your witches into the fancy black tower thing going on. And you're moving towers that they're on, and you're stacking up higher levels, so you could have witches hidden in between things. And so I found that to be very clever, that you have to cover up people. So you're not just doing it out as like a mean thing, like in some games, but instead you have to do it to be able to get all your little potions flipped over. But then being able to spend those potions for special abilities could really come in clutch at just right those perfect moments. And so I think that there's some really cool tactical nature behind it, but also it's fun, it's light. We played it with our daughter. It's not complicated. So I gave that a 7.5. The last one that I have is Take a Seat. And this one I gave a 7.5 as well. It's a roll and write style game. I feel like we should call it ... and write. So it's an and write game because you're not rolling, you're not flipping. In fact, there's perfect information in front of you, but you're trying to use that information based on the goals and these polyominoes that you're slowly marking off pieces and making them different shapes and smaller sizes. You're doing all of that to be able to fill seats in your theater and meet objectives. And so I think it's clever. I do know that it felt complicated, like overly complicated the first time that I played it, and my mind had trouble just trying to figure out what to do. Like, you can't just rotate your polyominoes around, and you're switching these boards back and forth with the other player and marking stuff off. And so initially I was like, oh, I don't think I really like this. But having a couple plays of it now under my belt, I enjoy it more. And so I do think that it's very clever. I think it's fun. But it definitely is one of those games that like you have to put a little work in, I think, to really see how it shines. But once again, gave that a 7.5. So thanks for joining me today. Let's see who's next. And I'm Wendy Yee.
This week I took a look at Legends of Andor, The Eternal Frost. Now this is a new standalone entry point for the Legends of Andor system series at this point, which I was really excited about. I came in at an 8 on this game. Really enjoyed it. Been intimidated to get into Legends of Andor. I found the tutorial system really great to get into this game, so it kind of took that overhead off. I've always heard this is a really puzzly game. Not so much about the story. All of that was true. I enjoyed the story, but it definitely kind of melts away with multiple plays and becomes more about that puzzle. But that's a really satisfying puzzle. Couple little qualms with it about some graphical design choices. You know, I wish the player aids were a little more accessible, things like that. But overall, very much enjoyed this and really enjoying this gaming series. And it inspired me to go back and look at some of the old ones as well. So Legends of Andor, The Eternal Frost, 8.0 for me.
Hey there, everybody. It's Mike DeLisio, and I'm back in Miami, the 305, Mr. Worldwide. Yeah, I got up very early this morning. Oh, week in review. Let's get to that. So I reviewed one game this week. I reviewed Bonsai, which is a very, very cute, pleasant tile-laying game where you are creating your own bonsai tree through drafting of cards and kind of a little bit of an economy with the different types of, things you're going to put on your tree, both the wood and the leaves and the fruits and things along those lines. It is not the most innovative game, but it is a lot of fun, and it's very quick, very approachable, and at the end you have this beautiful tree in front of you, and that actually got a half a point from me because the gimmick is a good gimmick. So 7.5, a game I can easily recommend. All right, well, that's it for me this week. Let's keep it moving.
So I took a look at 11 different games this week. Now, 7 of them are in the same video, and I don't want to necessarily recap that video, but there were some really interesting games in there, and then there was some that were not so fun, unfortunately, but you can check that out in 7 quick game reviews. I reviewed Oranienburger Kanal. This is a new one from Uwe Rosenberg, and it just didn't hit the mark for me. I felt like there was too much. It's ugly, but that's not that big of a deal. But I mean, it is a deal. But the decisions in this one were too obscured for me, and I felt like it wasn't very interesting the whole game, so I gave it a 5 out of 10. Bonsai. This is a very nice, light drafting / placing tiles that actually makes a cool looking bonsai tree. 7 out of 10. Splito. This is a game in which you are taking cards and splitting them, putting one on each side of you, and you're trying to make 2 scoring piles. I like it. A nice filler, 7.5. And Rauha, this game, another 7.5. Just a nice engine building game as you place tiles. You're going around the board. They're activating. I just really enjoyed how this was put together. We also did our top 10 game designers, our favorite game designers. We have our smorgasbord where we talked about art, crowd surfing. There was lots of different videos. I did a Q&A, so hopefully you enjoy all the various videos we did this week. Again, the short videos that I mentioned at the beginning there, those are being split up, and we put them on another station, another channel called Dice Tower Encore. So if you want to see short reviews from me and the rest of the Dice Tower staff, that's a good place to go and check them out. All right, I hope you enjoy Dice Tower TV starting soon. Until then, I'm Tom Vass, and you've been watching Week in Review on the Dice Tower.